Hello, this is the Provoked Prawn, and I might well have a calm voice, but that doesn't mean I'm not provoked by those people that don't hit subscribe. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the Razer DeathAdder V3 Pro and the glorious Model 02 wireless. Now, these are two mice that I think are worth comparing because they are interesting in their own rights in a number of different ways. The glorious mouse, for example, has some pretty glorious RGB that you can see here, but they're both upgrades to previous well-thought-of mice and have a number of tweaks that aren't immediately obvious. Now, I reviewed both these mice, and I'll link to those videos in the description because they are worth checking out in more depth. But here I'm going to put them side by side, do a sound test, talk about the features and highlights of each, and what I like and don't like about them to highlight what's interesting. I'm going to start with the glorious Model 02 wireless, which is an update to the previous glorious Model O, and it has a number of enhancements with enhanced specs under the hood that include up to 26,000 DPI, 650 IPS tracking speed, 50 Gs acceleration. It has both Bluetooth 5.2 low energy and 2.4 GHz wireless with this dongle that's included in there, a USB-A dongle, an adapter, and a USB-C charging cable, although as you'll see, the plugging in of the charging cable is mildly frustrating because it'll only plug in one direction. Now, Glorious claims up to 210 hours of battery life using the Bluetooth connectivity and 110 over 2.4 GHz. I did unfortunately find it was a lot less than that. However, firmware updates may well fix that in the future, so it's worth keeping that in mind. Update your firmware and you may have a better experience. Obviously, the RGB lighting will also have an impact, so if you have that on lower setting, you may get more life out of it. The DeathAdder V3 Pro is another upgrade from Razer, which includes some serious specs. It has up to 30,000 DPI through its Focus Pro optical sensor. It has 70 Gs max acceleration, 750 IPS max speed, so on paper, it is the superior mouse. It also has 1000 Hz polling rate as standard, but that's upgradable to 4000 Hz with the hyperpolling dongle. So in theory, it's better in a number of different ways. Also uses Gen 3 optical switches, which you'll get to hear a bit later on. And again, it uses 2.4 GHz. It does, however, lack Bluetooth. So there's no Bluetooth connectivity here. So that's one difference. And obviously there's no RGB lighting, no holes, and perhaps less buttons because there's not 6 programmable buttons. In fact, that one of them's buried underneath. Just bear that in mind as well. You will see that there are some nice large buttons on there though, and I really like the fit of this, and I'll show you the shape of it in the hand a bit later on compared to the glorious Model 02 wireless, which I thought was a bit more low profile and smaller, and obviously that has those holes in it to help with the lightweight design. You'll see the difference in weight though. Interestingly, the Glorious is actually heavier than the Razer DeathAdder V3 Pro. The DeathAdder also comes with grip tape included in the box, which I think actually makes it look a lot nicer, and even with that thrown on there, it's still lighter than the Glorious. So if you're looking for a lightweight mouse, the DeathAdder V3 Pro is actually the better of the two. Now, it's worth noting that the DeathAdder is more expensive than the Glorious. Depending on the region you're in, there's quite a bit of a difference in price. However, there is a reason for that. Obviously, you've seen the specs are better on paper, and in practice, in my experience, it is the superior mouse. It does have better tracking, better battery life, it's more comfortable, and it's better in a number of different ways. But Glorious has upgraded the sensor and a number of other things in there too, which means it shouldn't be dismissed necessarily. If you like the idea of the previous glorious Model O, the 02 is definitely an interesting upgrade and a nice looking mouse from a number of different angles. Also, you'll see ergonomic design on both of these. There's a nice dip in the switch, and the way the body's shaped means they both fit into the hand quite nicely. But if I put them side by side, and you'll see some more shots of this in a minute, you'll see that the sort of fit of the DeathAdder V3 Pro is a bit larger. The side buttons are quite a bit larger. You have more room for your thumb along the side. Obviously, it's going to vary depending on the shape and size of your hand. But for my personal hand shape, I found that the DeathAdder was a nicer fit. It pushes up into the palm nicer. It gives you bigger side button access. Just a general overall good fit in there. Obviously, both of them have got slick underside feet, and they're both lightweight enough to be able to flick around the desk really easily as well. They are quite a bit different, as you can see. Obviously, there's no RGB lighting on the DeathAdder, but it does have a little LED indicator in front of the mouse wheel to let you know when the battery's running low, so you do have a highlighter there. Although I did find that the battery lasted longer on the DeathAdder than it did on the Glorious mouse, and I think that's important because I did find it frustrating to have to plug that Glorious mouse in quite regularly. Now, if you have a look at the sort of shape from a side-on profile, you'll see how easy it is to sort of access those side buttons, but also just how much room my thumb has. Obviously, there's no thumb rest there, but there's plenty of space for that setup and just for the comfort. Whereas the Glorious mouse is a little bit thinner from sort of top to bottom, so your mouse hand sits a bit closer to the desk, and those side buttons aren't as easy to access. Now, this is for me a small minor problem. It was a nice mouse to use, but I definitely prefer the DeathAdder for the way it fits into the hand, so I think it's worth mentioning. Also, side by side aesthetically, they're quite a bit different when you put them here. Obviously, there are advantages to both of these. If you want Bluetooth, for example, the Glorious is more appealing. If you want that RGB lighting, Glorious is the one to go for. But if you want the higher end specs, perhaps a stealthier, more understated look, then the DeathAdder is also one to consider. And the fact that it looks amazing with grip tape is also a highlight. Don't forget to check out the links in the description to the full videos, but stick around now for a sound test to hear the difference between those switches. You've made it right to the end of the video, you brilliant legend you. If you've enjoyed it, click that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and drop me a comment down below if you've got any questions. If you really enjoyed it, consider joining the channel and see the benefits of doing so. Check out these other videos, you might well find them interesting or useful, and most importantly, have a great life.